I'm just going to, greet you as if that's already done. But
Great.
I
That's
wanted to
perfect.
tell you, my husband just got back on, Saturday from Poland. He was in Krakow. And
Hmm.
he said that, obviously he had also been to Warsaw before, but he didn't have a chance to explore, but he got to do all these tourist things in Krakow with the
Yeah.
he was with. And he was like, yeah, this place is like, it's ancient. Like,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
nothing in this country even remotely close. Are there 7-Elevens are
Yeah.
older than America?
Oh, oh no, it's crazy. And in trying to figure out where you're going, because I think even like Warsaw is like Warsaw. I think Warsaw. And like I spent time in, what was it called? Oh my God, no, I've forgotten how to say the town I went to closer to the German border last year in Poland, trying to understand what you read and play. It's crazy. Poland's a crazy, crazy fun
Yes,
visit. But yeah.
cool. All right, well, let's get started because you have many things that you're doing and are a
I
very
do,
busy
but this is a
person.
nice, this is actually a great morning for it. Lauren's working, doing some Zoom. I'll eat some lunch in a little while and actually getting prepped to head back to Arizona, I think, next week. But yeah, it's a good morning for it. So you got me as long as you want to talk.
Excellent. Okay. All right, so let's pretend I did my introduction, and here we go. Hey, Geoff, welcome to the Creative Life Podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, you are one of the coolest dudes that I know of. I don't really know you that well. Like, I know of you because I know your fabulous and lovely wife, but I have obviously watched you from a distance. I've seen your work. I watched your latest film. It was amazing. So, we're going to talk
Thank you.
about
Thank you so
that.
much.
But you are just a cool dude. So, you are a filmmaker.
I am.
Yes.
I'm a filmmaker, a professor, you know, hoping to retire from both if there's a way, but I'm not sure. So,
Is that really? Do you think you will retire from like
I
your
mean,
creative
I
work?
think, I mean, sure. I mean, I think, I love being described as a cool guy. I feel like I've just always been kind of a strange, nerdy outsider,
Oh,
person
wow.
trying to make it in these fields. And I got into indie filmmaking, I think, because I'm old. So indie filmmaking was this really kind of wild, welcoming thing in the end of the 80s and into the 90s, where if you could just muster the effort and friends and support to get something made, there was potentially a home for it, not necessarily a lucrative one, but there was a home to take your indie films to. And so I'll say lots of positive things, but I'll start with a sad negative thing is just having done this now for decades and seeing how I got into I got into indie filmmaking because it was kind of a weird outsider art of sorts. You had support from festivals, you had support from whatever whatever world of artistic creation there was. It- that has sadly largely eroded as the indie film has become a very gatekeepered, very much a cottage industry for whatever money was on the table to support Wild and Crazy Arts is now really there for $20 million small studio films,
I see.
masquerading as indies. And it's not that they're bad films, so I don't want to maybe later, I'll call some films out, but um, I don't want to hate on those films. They're fine films, but you know, seeing the South bys and the Sundances with eight A24 films all clocking in the tens of millions of dollars with A-list actors and calling that indie film, I think really closes all the doors for the weird stuff, the things people made without being part of the system that made me want to do this. So yeah, so it is. I do sometimes look for the exit ramp a little bit because with anything that you really I think that an artist really loves in those communities to see them shift to something that's primarily for people who went to elite schools and have
Yeah.
large trust funds and then partner
Yeah.
with investment bankers who are running studios. And that's being called indie. And I'm fine with those things existing, but when they call themselves indie and take those slots, they actually do close and lock the doors for anybody who's an actual outsider. So the indie film world pats itself on the back a whole lot now, saying how much it's radically inclusive and doing all these things. And I would argue it's not at all. And if you were to look at the economic backgrounds of a lot of the filmmakers that are now getting these opportunities and moving on, it's it's not comforting if you're not coming from a source of money and privilege to begin with, and if you're not already connected, it's it's hard. And I think you can even look at the days in the '90s where indie filmmakers came from Middle America, and now indie
Hmm.
filmmakers come from LA, and I think that's telling as to where we've gone. But anyway, that's the negative side. So that makes it sometimes feel like an exit ramp. Teaching, not maybe as much. Teaching is still fun, but it's tinged with a little bit of the realism that I'm teaching again where my heart's always been is a state school in the middle of America with people who might not necessarily succeed if you weren't there to help them. I mean, I wouldn't have been a filmmaker if it weren't for education. So part of what I do in teaching is try to give back to the people that were like me. I got into the Ivy Leagues I went to high school. Like I said, I'm a strange nerdy outsider. I um, was a scholarship kid, and my mom cleaned houses, and I went to go help her work as a maid in high
Where
school
did
to
you grow
go.
up?
Yeah, in Dallas. I went to this crazy
Oh,
private
wow.
school called Cistercian, run by a bunch of Hungarian monks who'd I think run from Nazis and then later run from the communists after the communists beat the Nazis and fled
Wow.
to North Texas. And so I went to this really strange school, and I got into the couple of Ivy League schools and thought, I kind of believed the myth that you just work really hard and then you get into these schools and then your career becomes easier. And I went to
Right.
Columbia for a week and then got turned down for my loans and had to drop out of Columbia because I couldn't pay my tuition and go back and work the night shift at Target. So I think I learned quickly in my path that I don't know, the story that if you just get good at something, these doors open and they let you in is not it's not as real as it seems, So you find other ways if you really want to do something to make it happen. But I was able to go back to school and actually went into the sciences and physics for a little while before going back and going to film school. But all that having been said, I was coming from a place where I was positioned to, as many of my cousins and such did, join the military or do these more working class jobs. And education gave me a chance to, as you said at the beginning, I'm no Spielberg, but I have some modicum of success in the fact that I've been able to make, some films that people have seen and they've gone out there. And I do credit the opportunities that education gave me. So I got into education to both because it is a job and you need a day job if you're a filmmaker, but also
Uh-huh.
because I do believe in really helping the people that this isn't something that there are some schools you can go to and you can teach at an Ivy League and you're going to help someone who was going to succeed and you are one of the means they get there. But if they took you out of the equation, they were still going to succeed. That they came from a background in a world where that was going to happen. That's fine. And those are cool things to do. But I also enjoy teaching in a world where people really weren't going to do this without education. And I do like handing those opportunities forward, which is why sometimes I say I'm looking for the exit ramp there too, is that there's a little sadness in me watching even state schools and such get so expensive that students are coming out with prohibitively large debts.
Yeah.
Um, and no matter how much I teach them, just compared to 20 years ago, the opportunities, if you're a student coming out of a state school in Colorado with a film degree, your opportunities to segue that into work in film have shrunk. Those opportunities are going to other people. They're not going to people who are already starting further back, no matter how much you train them. And again, just like with film, if it's something that I was so excited and I liked, I'm not saying it still doesn't have some really great things, but sometimes the erosion of that gets really sad. So then I get to a place where I'm like, wow, do I still feel good having students or students' parents or families take on loans to the tune of, 30 or $40,000 a year
Yeah.
um,
Well, let
to
me tell
leave.
you something, brother. You are
Yeah.
you are singing my song. I have two kids in college right now.
Yeah.
I was also raised very broke. My mother was a maid. I worked as a maid. That was my first job at a high school, was being a hotel maid.
It makes
And
us
I'm
really good at
also,
cleaning house.
yeah,
So,
I mean, I am a whiz at cleaning my house. Uh and I have very high standards when I go out too to a hotel. But the other thing is, yeah, I'm also really like I am a radical egalitarian, and I find it so annoying that art, which I believe is inherent, it's a thing that is part of being human, that it is often reserved as a way to make a living only for people that don't actually even need to make a living for themselves. And I understand, like I'm not trying to gatekeep those people either, but what I'm saying is obviously, the way power and money and all of these things work, it's just it's a closed loop. It's
It's a very
really, really
close.
hard. Yeah,
I think
it's
you're right.
really
I
hard to
think,
get it.
I feel like a lot of people believe, I mean, I think if we were to really look at it all and say, if your goal is to take down barriers and allow more people to make art and say things, then the absolute wrong approach is to just decide you're the right gatekeepers, which is what I think largely the film world has done, is they have somehow confused themselves into thinking we need more gatekeeping, but they're the right gatekeepers because they know which people should get through. And
Mm-hmm.
as good an idea as that is, I think anytime you create gatekeepers and you start saying these people have been doing a job for 10, 20 years, they really deserve to, they just know, they know well enough to say who should and shouldn't get in. Um, we should all be worried when we look at ourselves and say, I'm the one who knows really who needs to be in this room. We just need less gatekeeping. And, in the independent film world, the way the Sundances and South bys, and I've played both of those, so I don't want to be totally critical. They've helped me in times, but I think largely those doors are closing um, because they're so exclusive. And in the guise of saying we're going to help more people, they've now created labs. So now you have to be anointed by a lab before you even make your film, or
Wow.
you're not going to get to make your film. Even if you do, they're going to pick the lab people over yours. So it doesn't even matter if you make something good. We've already picked who's going to get into the festival before anyone's even made a film, and
Yeah.
the same producers are back every year. And they say, well, that's because those producers know how to choose the best. As soon as you start saying these people know how to pick the best, I think we're massively doing this wrong. I mean, I have a whole belief, and I think there's a lot of easy ways to fix it. And one of them is to disempower gatekeepers. We just don't need gatekeepers. And
How are you going to
um,
do that? Just crack them on
I
the knees with a baseball bat?
no, I mean, I think sadly gatekeepers don't. Who wants to give up their position
It's true.
of being the center of this stuff, even if you don't realize that's what you're doing. I think if you look at other things besides filmmaking, because filmmaking is for everyone listening to this who wants to be an artist, like, man, I have a karate rock band where I put on prosthetic arms and sing songs about the karate kid. And it's ridiculous, and I'm not a great musician. I've still made more money off of that than I've made off of being a filmmaker. You
Wow.
know, filmmaking is a really independent filmmaking, I should say, is a really bad model for sustaining it if you actually need to not lose thousands of dollars every year on your art. Just because there's not, if you imagine, you play your local bar, you at least get free beer. You might get paid $100 to play a show,
Yep.
even a tiny show in a little town. With your film, everyone wants, if you're going to play Sundance, you actually can't have played anywhere else. You're disqualified as soon as you play somewhere else. It has to be, your premiere. And they're not going to pay you anything. They are going to sell tickets, but they're going to keep 100% of the proceeds. And in fact, they're not even going to let your whole crew in for free. So it'd be like if you were playing a show, not only did they not pay you to play the show, but if you have a 7-person band, they made you pay for 5 of the people to get in to play the show. So you're just net losing money. And you're like, well, I'll play the club next door. No, 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 exclusive. You can't also play the club next door. And nobody watches a film a second time. So even when you hit the jackpot and play a Sundance or a South by, it's very unlucrative unless you can get one of very, very few sales. We're not talking about even a number close to 1% of getting a sale. So you're like, and then it takes you a lot of money to make a film. Even on the cheap, you're going to spend,
Yeah.
making a $50,000 feature is an extremely, like, for a lot of people, a $50,000 feature, that seems unimaginable. You've got to remember that when you look at the Sundance lineup, I mean, I don't think anything went to Sundance under $1 million this year. And if it did, it was 900,000 maybe. So you've got to know that the bottom of the bottom, the next category is still people having $1 million to throw away, which again is crazy. So, that's this nuts world of having to compete. But I do think there's a really easy fix, and I don't think anyone will do it. Maybe someone will listen to this and then, please steal my idea world and do this. But if you look at music, if you look at sports, you look at these other things where people still do often come from various class strata and still make it to the top. One of
Yeah.
the reasons is because you can compete in those arenas in a local level. And if you do well on the local level, you move up to a slightly larger regional level. You move up to maybe a state level, to national level, to international level. So if you're an athlete, you play in high school, you play for a college, you get on a professional team. That would be the arc. And your professional team plays for years, and eventually you go to the Super Bowl. That would be like an arc for a football player, for example.
Right.
For a musician, you play the bars in your little town, and then you go to the bigger city close by and you play some bars, and then you get an opening act for your touring, and you move up, and eventually you play Carnegie Hall or whatever. I don't know what the Super Bowl for a musician is these days, but you get the idea.
It's the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you play the Super Bowl. Actually, it is. You're right. So now you play the halftime show at the Super Bowl. That's how you get there. Now, if you're an independent filmmaker, there's some people that decide who plays the Super Bowl. And when you make a film, the very first time your film ever plays has to be the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
I've just decided your film deserves the Super Bowl before anyone else ever sees it because I know best. And there's gatekeepers that anoint and choose that slot, and then you're successful. If, for example, you played your local theaters, you're now disqualified. Your premiere status is gone. You can't play these festivals. So not only do you have to be anointed, but you can't work your way up. If we rethought the film world, because also, it's hard to get into these festivals, things like Sundance, they get 17,000 applicants. It, as much as I love some of those people programming, they'll tell you things like, oh, we watch every one of them. Mathematically, the people really making the decisions can't watch every single film that comes in. There's not enough minutes in a year. There's so many people that want that slot. It's technically impossible for the real decision makers to see everything. So how would you, I think, make this more egalitarian? I think the answer is the festivals where films get bought and the real markets, they shouldn't be open to everyone to apply. What we should do is we should empower local festivals, regional festivals, which I think is where the real hard work and in my opinion, the most exciting films end up getting shown, and then no one sees them, and those filmmakers never make a second film because premiering at Tallgrass is an amazing experience, but it's a hard one to segue into economic success for your film.
Yeah.
But if instead we said you can't apply to these international top tier festivals, what happens instead is you apply to regional festivals. And just like they do for the Academy Awards, shorts categories and such, the festivals agree upon 300 festivals scattered around the world of regionals. If you win any award in a regional festival, that qualifies you to apply for a top tier festival. So now they're getting 1,500 applications instead of 15,000 applications because you have to be just these award winners. Then the team can really go through these. And then what it also says is everything that makes it forward, it's getting proposed by radically different communities all around the world. So if this small community in Ireland, this community in Buffalo, New York, this community, whatever, really like this film, that's the one they put forward to compete. It doesn't mean all of them are going to get accepted, obviously. But I think that if we made the selection committee the greater artistic communities around the world, you would do it like you do with sports and such, where your film works its way up to the top instead of being anointed at the top
Yeah.
and then being a success. But I don't think anyone wants to rethink the festival model that way. But I do honestly believe if we did that, you would just get a larger variety of films making these top tier festivals and a larger variety of
Right.
producers because, and directors, because they had to come from all these different places. And one could argue, will they have the same quality of the system we get now? And I would argue, what do you even mean by quality?
Yeah.
Would we
Yeah,
have,
that is a great point, actually.
yeah,
Because
would we
so
have a
here's
homogeneous group? No. And I
yeah,
don't like them.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay, so here's something that has been on my mind because I'm a writer. And I read a lot of back catalog, right? Like I'll go to Goodwill and I'll just buy a bunch of cheap books and I'll read them. And what I've noticed is books that were written even a decade or two ago have much more diversity in tone, in style, and even in subject matter, right? Which is really ironic because nowadays we have this huge push toward quote unquote diversity. But it does feel like we're getting a homogenous media landscape at the same time. And I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I kind of know.
I mean, I think the problem just comes from like, look, we all go home. I'll Lauren and I will go have, lunch later this afternoon, and I have all the things that I think I'm right about and my opinions, and I think I'm right. That's fine. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. That if we empower too many people to say this is the one we need to have because I know I'm right about it, as much as we feel like we're opening the door to all these things, we're actually closing the door to a lot of diversity. If we just say the things that I don't think are right shouldn't be here, things I think none of us is going to be perfect, and none of us is going
Right.
to be able to do that. But the combination of social media and I think we're in a very gatekeepered society now, despite the fact we think we've thrown that off. I don't
Yeah.
think we've gone the opposite direction. So even like, how does one tell a story? I laugh about this all the time. Like, I used to enjoy more. Okay, I don't like people are gonna listen to this and be like, what is with this grump? But like, even there's like now there's the moth way of telling your personal story, and people train on how to tell their personal stories, on the way to pause, on the way to talk, on the way to homogenize the way we even tell a story. And I
Mm.
think to myself, that's insanity. I have some friends that tell stories and I glaze over because they wander and I don't know what they're talking about. But I'm still glad their version of telling a story exists. Everything can't be a trained way to make all of art in that we all have to do it the same way. That just
That
seems bad. I think
sucks.
writing is the same way. No one's going to write Ulysses. No one's going to write like just. I want some people to just write crazy and different. I want some
Me
people
too.
to write with grammar that I don't love or paragraphs that are going on too long. Whatever. I don't know. I'm just making up ways they could write, which also defeats what I'm even saying, because if I'm thinking of it, it's not someone's totally different thing. But I want someone to just write in a way that I wouldn't have thought about writing things. And I don't need a lab and a gatekeeper to look at the person who writes that way and say, really, what you need to do is write it this other way, and then we're going to publish it. I don't,
Yeah.
yeah, then we
Yeah,
don't get to
I
write.
picked up Bill Burroughs, William S. Burroughs' book Junkie. It was his first book that he wrote. It was about, being addicted to heroin. He wrote
Yeah.
it, I guess, in the 40s, whatever. I had never read it before. So I picked it up and I read it and I was like, this is this is just, if I turned this in to any agent or editor, they would just be like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Right. But if you read it, and I actually read he had some commentary in the beginning. He was very precise. Like, he's like, this is exactly how I want it to be, even down to the title. They changed the title on him. He's like, no, I want it
What's the other
spelled
two?
this way. Yes. And so but that's the whole point, right? Is like, this is an artist vision. We don't give a shit about artist vision anymore. Like, we are only concerned, it's very self-referential. We only want media that reflects us to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And in so doing, we end up, kind of balkanizing according to identity groups. We have queer literature, we have Black literature, we have this, we have that. And I understand, but I also am very skeptical that that's what we're doing. I don't think that that's diversification. I think that's called niche marketing. I think it's a way to capture a group of people and to ensure that they're going to keep buying your shit, as opposed to giving people the opportunity to go out there and just be themselves, be individually insane as an artist, which
Absolutely.
is the best shit that's out there, or was.
I fully agree. And I think we're really curtailing and not only are we not rewarding the people who are really thinking outside of the box, but we're making it not possible for them to even keep making it. And that's where, like I say, again, I'll go back to the exit ramp. Sometimes I'm like, look, I should just start a band, or I should go write a book. That of all art forms, film is the most expensive and complicated to get made. And the more we are not giving the opportunity for films that don't go through an insane number of people who have to okay it to even exist in the independent. I mean, that's fine. The industry world's always going to be that of giant, like, I mean, Cord Jefferson, I gave that speech at the Academy Awards, which made me extremely happy. I was very sad to see Lily not win, but I was very happy to see Cord's speech. And to paraphrase it, we need to make more cheaper movies. And I think that's absolutely the only hope we have, is that more cheaper movies need to be made. And I don't think we really need $300 million films. I'm not
No,
sure it's
no,
an art that
no.
needs to
And in fact,
exist.
that this actually happened with, I will say, one of the things that's happening in publishing is that a lot of the gatekeepers are now just being bypassed because self-publishing became a thing. And to your earlier point, there's a lot of crap out there now, a lot more crap that you have to wade through. But I would rather wade through the crap and find gems than just be spoon-fed pablum that like
Absolutely.
blah, right? Just
No, and I
blah.
think that's one of the reasons, like, as hard as it is right now to be an author, to be a musician, to be a painter, I think because at the end of the day, you can make your record, you can make your painting, you can write your book on the types of resources that a regular person can gather up.
Right.
There's room for this just self-publishing to capture all those, whether it's opening your own gallery, whether it's selling your music direct on the internet. I'll just call that self-publishing as a catch-all for directly marketing your work. Um, that film is in this really scary spot that makes me sad about film is that, if you need bare minimum the price of an expensive car, but more likely you need to spend more on a film than you're going to spend on your home in your whole
Yeah.
life. It's really hard to find any way to recoup any of that without all of these mechanisms in there. So it's getting really hard to bypass. And sadly, I hope here maybe some of the, you know, major publications, and by that I even mean the indie wires and stuff, the publications that are indie should listen to this and start reviewing small films. Give them because you can't, no one knows you exist because you can't get a review unless you premiered at Sundance, South by, Tribeca. Um, you can't sell your film without a review. You can't get it. Like it's this massive self-feeding loop where all we hear about is everything everywhere all at once. And we call that a victory for an indie film. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
25, $30 million film with A-list actors, made by a studio that's worth half of what Paramount Pictures is worth. So again, good film. Is that an indie victory? And I think it really depends on what you consider an indie film. That's certainly not a film made by some people who had to just rally their community resources and make something. It's a victory for, filmmakers who played 7 films at Sundance, have A24 backing them, have 10,000 theater releases. Like that's a whole different game. But I agree with you. I mean, and now that's all the negative, Jeff, because I'm a grumpy old man. But
Are you gonna switch it up and become sunshine now?
well, I do have a unfortunate, bit of optimism that runs through me, and I do to take it back to what's still nice in teaching, and maybe what's nice in some of this. And part of the reason I actually am so vocally grumpy is that um, things always can improve. I'm a strong believer that no matter how bad your situation is, and if anyone's listening to this and just going through a bad time in life, listen to me on this. No matter how bad things are, I'll never be the Pollyanna sunshine person that says, "Hey, you can fix everything," because fixing everything is oftentimes impossible. But you can always make a few decisions that make tomorrow, the next hour, whatever the direction you're going, you can always make it better than it was right now. So there's always a way to improve. And I do hope that the younger filmmakers, anyone listening to this who's thinking, oh, I want to get into making art, I want to make films, the hope is that things can change and things will change if the new people doing it make them change. And I wish I could be like, this is how you should do it. And I guess I partially can. I'd say I'd invert it. I'd start saying empower local filmmaking communities and showing things, bring excitement back to showing movies in your community in a space and make those be the ones that go up and sell. I think that's an idea, but maybe my idea is not even the right one. I do think that the future is unwritten and that people, if they really want to make filmmaking work again, it can be done. So I think that challenge is, and I don't want to. I'm certainly not going to be ageist. The challenge is also for those of us that are older doing it. But there's a lot of young people with a lot of energy and a lot of creative ideas, and if they can think of ways to self-publish, if they can think of ways to bypass, I think the system that really doesn't allow indie filmmaking to exist, bypass it. I'm going to support you.
Yeah.
Buy physical media. I think it's an interesting thing. Physical media kind of died, but I have been watching with my students. I mean, one great thing about teaching too is you go to a room with a bunch of 20-year-olds every day. So I'm not going to say I know what's going on in the 20-year-old brain, but I feel like for a 50-year-old man, I spend a lot more time with 20-year-olds than most people. So I have some tiny hint of what they're thinking and doing and watching who, are they talking about buying DVDs and stuff? They're buying Blu-rays again because they're realizing streamers, there's no way for something you want to see to necessarily be available the way it was in a video store. I made films because of, you know, cult movies, the Alex Coxes, the Jim Jarmushes, um, the Penelope Spheris, all these things that these were films that didn't necessarily get wide release. I mean, even like things like Mike Judge and Office
Yeah.
Space, they didn't necessarily get out in the world, but then they got onto a VHS or DVD and they sat, video stores around the country bought them and they sat on a shelf. So people like me were teenagers and walked by and were like, oh, I've never heard of that one, but the cover looks cool. And you rent them. But they have the freedom to sit there for 20 years building up their fan base.
Uh-huh.
And that was really the heart of that's what cult films really, came from. But now with streaming, you have 3 months to be the hot thing of the minute, and then you're off of streaming. And literally with a lot of distribution deals, your film ceases to exist. Now there aren't video stores. It doesn't sit on the shelf in 3,000 cities across the country hoping to
Yeah.
get seen. It just goes away. But why am I positive? I'm seeing students buying from Factory 25. I'm seeing them buy physical media because they're worried these little films won't, and they're rightfully worried that these little films, and I don't mean little in any diminutive way. I'm throwing myself in with little films. I mean films that aren't getting the giant
For sure.
attention. That those smaller films, those little films, those cult films, those weird films, those outsider films, those films are available because they're on your shelf now. Gary
Yeah.
Farmer was asking next time he tours, First Nations and Native reservations throughout the U.S. playing music. He was like, "Can I get a bunch of the Blu-rays to just sell out of my trunk?" And I can think of nothing better than the hope that he'll go to some community and some kid 10 years from now will watch Quantum Cowboys because that was one of the Blu-rays on their parents' shelf. And that's what they had to choose from. They didn't have a streamer at the time. Like, I'll just put in this Blu-ray because it looks weird. And then they watch it 5 times because they had that physical media. I want to see that happen again. And I do think, maybe the younger people are doing that again. Things do come in cycles. So again, I'm a little bit negative, but I'm vocally negative. So people will say, hey, I think there's a problem here. And then they'll figure out ways to solve things that I couldn't figure out. I think that's
Okay, but
that's
let me
good.
ask you this. And I am very interested in your response to this because, like you, I'm a weirdo. I always was kind of on the margins. I've always been drawn to art, literature, music that's weird or off. I mean, look, I'm not above a little Hall and Oates, but I'm talking about like I love weird shit that most people are not going to like. And a lot of the coolest shit that has been made has come from the counterculture or came from a counterculture, whether it was punk or the beat generation or all these, really kind of disaffected people who lived on the margins. And that has never been a good business model. I mean, people who had money and power might have taken a fancy to it, lifted it up, and, sold millions of copies on their behalf. But for the most part, the really cool stuff is not mainstream. I think Oscar Wilde said something about, popularity is the worst thing that you can have. Like, it's just, have you seen the public? Their taste is terrible. So, on one hand, like, I totally respect the kind of weird shit that you're into, and that, like, we'll talk about Quantum Cowboys. That movie was nuts. It's nuts, right? I hadn't seen anything like that in a long time, and I was like, oh my god, where did this come from? Like, wow. So all of that is really good, but on the other hand, how are you going to sustain that,
You
right?
can't.
And right, so my question, like, I think what you're saying, and I think what I understand is there's two things that have to happen here, and none of them have anything to do with the quote unquote industry. First, we need to make it cheaper to make movies however we can. I think technology will get us there. It's done that with publishing, it's done that with lots of with music, where you can directly market your stuff, you have access to more tools and whatever. So I think that is happening. It's not, you're never going to be able to compete with a giant studio's equipment, but you're going to be able to make something and it's going to be decent. And then the other thing is community. right? We have to have, like, one of the reasons why all that indie shit was cool, and one of the reasons why all that marginalized art was so cool is because it was it was culture. It was
Yeah.
traded among a group of people who were like-minded, who shared a certain way of being in the world and certain values. And it seeped out a little bit off, out of those corners, and some of the mainstream people picked it up and they liked it. But for the most part, there was a core group of people that were like building this stuff. And you can see little pockets of like creatives who throughout history kind of worked together, or they had little niches where they would meet together. They had salons, they had working groups, whatever. And around them was a whole layer of people that would patronize them and support them and follow them till they died, just true blue fans.
Yep.
All of that has been diluted in our modern media landscape. And what it's going to take, and I hate to have to say this, but actually I don't, is we're going to have to get our ass off the fucking internet for, a little while, and like go hang out with some people and do some stuff in real life and like bond around these things. And the
Yeah.
art that comes out of that is going to be so much richer and cooler. It's just too easy to sit there and binge a Netflix series that is formulaic. It's too easy to just stream some clown on YouTube. It's just too easy to do that stuff in the privacy of your own home. And I'm worried. Like, I see a lot of rhetoric, and I'd love to hear what you are hearing from the 20-year-olds, because a lot of the rhetoric that I hear online is people who are like, I hate people. I don't want to be in, I don't like going out in public. I hate this. I hate that. Like, what is it? Is it misanthropy? Is that what it is when you hate people?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, or at least
Yeah.
that was, yeah. Mean, I've got all kinds of thoughts, a million thoughts on that. One, I think that we have, as a society in general across the board, we have overvalued picking the people that we can't stand. That like that's now a new like badge of honor to like these. I hate these people because of this. I look. I hate people too. Like I get it. I get how people are angry, but I'm also not sure that the opposite of finding common ground is really the way we dig ourselves out. I think that there's only so long you can have billions of people and have them all basically dislike one another and think that somehow this is sustainable. I don't
Uh-huh.
know. I don't know what that is. I we've got to figure out what we have in common with each other and lean into that and not figure out what we have not in common, which I think is what we largely do now. So,
Yeah.
so I agree. I mean, I think movies were cool because you sat in a, room and you went out with other people and you saw them and it was kind of an event. And I do, and again, I want to really praise, I've been critical of some of the film festival structure, but I'm critical of the industrialized film festival. The regional festival, I was lucky enough to be in Movie Maker Magazines, help them pick their 25 coolest festivals last year, and I really tried to showcase some. There's other festivals I didn't, there was only a limited number of slots, so I couldn't showcase all of them that deserve it. But being able to give a shout out to some festivals where the programmers are volunteers or super underpaid, work year round, shine a light on a mix of wide ranging and very local films, and try to bring people out and get audiences in there. That's the way to experience art together. If you're watching at home and checking your phone and you're happy because you read that this film had a good message. Messages are important, but if the whole reason you watch a film is because you heard it had a good message, you do some other stuff, you kind of half watch it. I don't know if you're really absorbing it as an art form. I mean, I
Uh-huh.
say my gut is you're not. And we're going largely down that road, or I don't know if people even watch. I mean, when Quantum Cowboys didn't get into a number of major festivals. The paraphrased version from many of them was just that this is a great film, but you have to watch the whole thing to understand it, or maybe you might even have to watch it two or three times to get it. Um, and they say things like our audiences really they like a film they can really get in about 8 minutes. I'm like, well,
Oh my
why
God.
would I watch 100 minutes if I could get it in 8 minutes? My very favorite films are films that you have to watch over and over again. Okay, Alex Cox, friend of mine, also one of my favorite filmmakers and very influential on what I do, has numerous films that are good. Repo Man, Sid and Nancy,
Mhm.
Straight to Hell. if you'd asked me a few years ago, those would be like, if what are your favorite Alex Cox films? It'd be those. Even though I think if you asked Alex what his favorite film is, he'd say Walker. And I was always like, well, Walker's good, but it's also a little slow. There's different things. I don't know, was it my favorite? I watched Walker for the seventh time last June at the Oak Cliff Film Festival, which is a great film festival in Dallas. And they double featured. We played Quantum Cowboys and they played Walker. And Alex was there with me, so we did a Q&A for my film, and I went and watched his Q&A for Walker and watched it again. One, I watched it on the big screen. Two, I watched it for the seventh time and got out of that film, and I suddenly realized Walker is my favorite Alex Cox film. It didn't get better. I finally watched it enough, I think, to better understand the film and realize how good it is. It took me
Yeah.
7 times of watching that over 20 years to really appreciate the film in the way I think it deserves to be appreciated. It blew me away, and now I'd say it's its best work. And I could talk to you for the rest of the podcast about why I think that, but I won't get into why I think that. But that's the movie I always hope I'm making, is a movie. I hope that a movie that you're unsure about and takes time and
Yes.
it isn't perfect and has its bumps and bruises, but sometimes those bumps and bruises are what make it inspiring to make your own art. Sometimes the imperfections, I don't need to just see movies that are perfect. I want to see a movie that makes me think about the ideas and think about how I might do similar ideas or slightly different or say it in another way. I want to make ones that confuse me, or I come back to it and I say, maybe I didn't get that. Maybe it's actually saying the opposite of what I thought it was saying. I want that conversation
Mm.
with art. Otherwise, you do just watch it once and it's disposable. But again, the indie film market is very much getting lined up where we're not encouraging you to make a David Lynch piece, to make Walker. We're encouraging you to make something that someone has to just get. In fact, the programmers are turning it off in 7 or 8 minutes if they don't get it. I produced Skinner Meyer's new film, Before I Fade Away Into Nothing. It's a great piece of slow cinema. Um, it's black and white, shot on 35 millimeter. We made it for literally nothing. As a producer, I'm carrying, two full 35 mags up and down a 13,000-foot mountain in knee deep snow. Like we put it all, in there. Um, you know, Programmers can say what they want, but watching the Vimeo links, people aren't watching more than 6 or 7 minutes. And it's definitely another film that
Wow.
we played it for a test audience in Boulder at a theater, and there wasn't laughter. There what People didn't know how to take it until maybe 30 minutes in, and then we got to the end and people loved the film, and suddenly there's laughing, there's emotion, and what's also slightly depressing, but it's also funny. Film about, I won't give too much away, but Skinner's film on two, adult black brothers dealing with grief in their own ways and their own fractured relationships. But it's also funny. It's also very specifically Skinner's voice. And I think if programmers aren't even going to make it to the end of these films before they take something that's more easily palatable, if festivals aren't where something like that goes, where do we go with work that's a little different?
Mm.
And that's terrifying because I want there to be work that's a little different. I even, I'm jumping on different thoughts, but yeah, when you come back to like, what are the kids thinking and saying? I think young people are making TikToks, and I think young people are doing stuff because the buy-in is easier. There is no gatekeeper. You can do it.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to disparage TikTok as an art form, but I will say it's not an art form for me. I'm actually not interested in the super short attention span. So I get sad because I do think there are TikTok creators out there who are young people. If they were really thinking and making a 90-minute piece of art, it might really appeal to me. But I'm never going to see that piece of art. Selfishly, I'm going to miss out on pieces of things created that I might have enjoyed that some off the wall outsiders would make because there isn't really a means for them to make these other ones. And, again, I
Yeah.
don't fully know how to fix that, but I
Yeah.
do think. I do think it can be fixed. I do think we should fix it. And I think the primary place we need to start fixing it is we need to make the landing strip, so to speak, for these pieces of art more hospitable, more welcoming. That it's hard enough to get these things made, but you can find a camera and you can find some collaborators and you can do some wild stuff and get a film made. Again, imperfect as it might be. Hal Hartley, Simple Man, maybe in his film Simple Man, there's a great quote where the two guys are sitting next to each other and they watch this piece and they're like, well, that was a failure, but at least it was an interesting failure. I love an interesting failure, meaning it didn't achieve every single thing it thought it was going to achieve, but it did something. different and wild and eye-opening. I love that. I want to see that over and over and over again in all its different incarnations. And we need to create a media landscape that welcomes that and that champions that instead of making sure we have polished $25 million films. Those films are great, but they can just be released in theaters. They don't necessarily need to launch at the South Bys and Sundances of the
Yeah.
world.
Okay, there's two things. One, I want to just rewind briefly to where we were talking about, how the length of a piece and the cadence of it, right? The slowness of it, and the fact that sometimes you do watch things and you're like, what the fuck is this, right? And it challenges you, and you immediately, sometimes you're repulsed by it. But to your point, art is not a product. It's not there to make you feel good about yourself. It's a conversation, and it's an invitation to conversation by an artist. And when you are consuming a piece of art, the response when you don't, quote unquote, get it tells me a lot about who you are as a person, right? If you're a person that's like, this is just shit, which I hear all the time, people will watch something and be like, this is just shit.
Yeah, it's
Okay, why is it shit? But then when you turn it around and your view, the fact that you went back and watched that goddamn movie 7 times, right,
yep.
shows me a humility of character that says this person, who I trust because I know they're an artist, I know they're a filmmaker, I know they're a good person, made this thing, and I don't get it, but I want to get it. I need to understand it. There's something here that's triggering me, that's making me want to understand it. And so you kept at it. And that to me is like, that's how we should be consuming art. It's not about, I can relate to this, or this, I feel seen, or I'm represented here. And I understand again all of why representation is important, why being seen is important. I get it. I liked fucking Barbie. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, art isn't that, right? I think there's a case to be made even that once something has been through that many layers of editing and whatever, it's no longer art, it's product, right? It's a manufactured product. And when it appeals to the lowest common denominator, is it really art, or is it just product? And look, that's a call that I can't make, nobody can make, but I'm asking us to think about it in that way, because art as it comes from individual artists or small collectives is weird, and it's not going to resonate with you immediately, and you have to push past some discomfort to really engage with it. But if you have the spirit of exploration, if you have the need to understand the world in different ways, you're going to keep reaching out for that kind of art that makes you uncomfortable. So to me, I think we just need a whole lesson in how to actually consume art, how to appreciate art. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why people take these classes at university, but obviously
Yep.
not everybody goes to university, and not everybody takes those classes. So there's that.
Yeah, you
Oh,
need
go
to
ahead.
go see art that you didn't immediately like. You need to look at that again because maybe it's actually bad and doesn't appeal to you, but maybe
Yeah.
it also takes time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that are outside your framework of knowledge and understanding and experience, right? Even within our own culture, with the same language, this, and we're not even talking about like film from other countries, just here in America, with the same kind of basic ability to understand one another, we have such diversity of experience. And so you're you go to movies to get those experience, to understand those experiences, right? And to me, that's just the beauty of it. Like I mean, that's what you do. When I was a little kid and I would go to the library in the summer all day by myself, and I would just pick random books off the shelf because I wanted to know everything about everything. I thought it was all so interesting, right? And now I feel like we're just so locked into our egocentric way of viewing the world. And part of it is consumerism, right? Like everything is about you. It should be you. You should be happy all the time. You should be, your needs should be met. And if not, then you should go on Twitter and scream about it. So that is part of it. The other thing is,
Adversity,
uh,
even in art, I think is important. I mean, like I think you said
yeah,
it earlier in this, but a lot of when stuff is hard and you have to overcome it, sometimes you don't even overcome it. When you're wronged, even it builds character. I think is a throwaway phrase because people think someone makes you better. I'm not going to use it like that. I mean, builds character in the sense it makes you who you are and how you think and how you react to situations, and it creates empathy and it creates trauma and it creates all these different pieces that make you. And I mean, I think in some way, the adventure of art should be like that too. There should be a slightly adversarial relationship with you and the things you consume. That's
word.
okay and good. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So then the other thing that I think is really having an impact right now, I'm going to say this especially for young people, because when you get to our age, we're kind of too old to give a shit. Um, but you know, the internet is a scary place. Social media is a scary place. People will tell you with no reservation, even if they don't know you, how much you suck, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh,
they'll
yeah.
just come at you. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. And if you're a young artist, if you're hell, even if you're an old artist, art is risky. It is risky if you're doing it right. If you're trying to put something new and interesting into the world, you are going to hear bad things about you and your art. Like that's just how it is. Even the best artists in the world, right? Like geniuses are out there, like biting their nails when they release their stuff because they fear public opinion. And public opinion is ubiquitous and it's running the show, right? Everybody and nobody wants to be the main character on Twitter. And so the problem with that, of course, is that in order to make good art, you have to make bad art, and you have to be willing to suck, and you have to be willing to take that heat, right? And so from your perspective, how do we help people get comfortable with not giving a shit about other people's opinions, to be able to come in and say, and look, I'm not saying that we want to just be as weird as possible so that and make no money whatsoever. Obviously, we want to make some money. We want audience. We're artists, right? It's no good if we're just doing it for ourselves. I mean, it's fun, but it's not. I mean, we want to share this with the world. But at the same time, like you can't allow the public discourse to dictate your art. You just can't. And if you do, you'll be crushed, you'll be miserable, or you'll put something out that's just not satisfying to you and you'll lose interest eventually. So how
I mean,
do you approach that?
that's my fear. That's why I say sometimes I'm looking for the exit ramp, that I'm not sure that film is, I think relatively soon, film, if we go on the course we're on, film should not be considered an art form. It should be considered, you know, an entertainment form. But I think the problem is that we're making a place where I think there's a lot of filmmakers who are, I think, and I'll include myself in this, completely fine without the adoration, I mean, I'm the number of people that, I mean, actually, there's a lot of good reviews out there, but also you can go into like Letterboxd, you can read, and the people, we get a bad review. It's like, this is just totally random. This doesn't come together. This is, blah, blah, blah. They're wrong. I mean, my movie might be bad. That's a subjective thing. If people say it's obtuse and it's confusing, great. Random is wrong. I would argue there's very few films that are less random than Quantum Cowboys. The amount
Mm.
of flowcharts and specific, it's it's micromanaged to everything you see on the walls. It all has a meaning and it all does come together. Like, so if your review is this movie's terrible because it's random, it means you were lazy.
Uh,
That's what that review actually means. You say it's random, it means you didn't take the time to realize it might be. If you say it's boring, if you say it's poorly structured, fine. I'll take those lumps. I'll even take the other lumps. But some people get in there and just is random. Even that though doesn't bother me. It just makes me think you were a lazy viewer if you're like, this movie is just random. Because it's like, well, there's a lot of problems my movie might have. Random is specifically the opposite of what the film is. So that one's not quite right. But the problem is that, I think a lot of artists don't mind taking their lumps and reading bad reviews. But the problem is, because of that little bit of bad, like, you just can't make another. I like to think with Quantum Cowboys, like it or not, I gave an audience a film, which is hard to do in 2024. I gave audiences a film like they've never seen before. There
that's
is no
right.
point of reference. I think for me to sit in this podcast and describe my film to listeners and say, this is what my film's like. I can't, because there isn't really quite a frame of reference. So no matter what I've set my film up to be, if you go and watch it, it's not that. It just isn't that. It's not whatever you think it's going to be coming into it, which I think is hard to do. It's also hard to get people to give something totally, everyone says they want something new, but what they really want is the same old thing with a slight variation. But so I gave the world a film that's, I think, genuinely unique and new. Um, Sadly, the world's response to that was there is no place for this. And, I wrote three of these, and Lily wants to come back and do these. The cast wants to come back and make these. I'm never going to get to make the two sequels because we're not even going to, I made this film for, way under $1 million. I made this film on, it's depends on which way you want on when we started shooting, we finished, whatever. But the second Lily Gladstone lead to come out ever in the history of films, and
Yeah.
we can't make back a sub-$1 million film. We can't even come close, which if we did, I know the producers would pay for a sequel, but we're not going to get a sequel because we can't even come anywhere near breaking even. It just becomes a money loss for anyone to allow me to make these films. So I think the problem is multifold. This is actually still the rambling and answer to your question. I think for artists who are already scared about getting not understood, bad reviews, whatever, you hit those walls of lack of, I tell my students that even when they're just in class and they're giving each other critiques, that you've got to learn how to give critiques. And one of the things you have to learn about giving critiques to people you care about is how to be honest with people and talk about things that aren't working for you in their works in progress, but do in a way that doesn't sound like an attack. But the
Yeah.
flip side is, as a person receiving critiques, you have to figure out how to realize that critiques are always going to hurt. I tell them it's not, you don't figure out how for it not to hurt. No matter how long you're in this, when someone criticizes your work, it always hurts because you put a lot of yourself into it. And if you really cared about your work, when people don't like it, it hurts. And it hurts even more when it's specifically a part of your work that you were already worried or had a gut instinct wasn't as effective as it
Mm.
should be. So the part of your own art that's maybe not working, you're going to be most sensitive about. So you don't learn how to not have that hurt. You learn how to realize the person telling you that is not attacking you, and to not make that hurt make you dislike them. It makes you listen and try to learn and work on it. So it's a very hard thing. But I think enough artists can kind of, as much as they're scared of that, they can get to that place where they can take the critiques. The problem is we need to make a landscape where if you make a film, that it can exist at all if it's not just universally welcomed by a very small group of gatekeepers. And where we are now is there's a very small group of gatekeepers, and they get to pick what 0.25% of filmmakers deserve to ever make another film. And that's depressing to me because,
Yeah.
one, I don't think we should all make our first, I think the new director award went to what's his name? Played the kid in The Squid and the Whale. Um, God, what is his
I
name?
I boycott the Oscars. I
He,
hate
well,
it.
well, he, no, he didn't get at the Oscars, but at
Oh,
Sundance, he
okay.
won
Oh, I
like
see.
a emerging independent film, director award. Jesse Eisenberg. Jesse
Okay.
Eisenberg's great. I would argue he's already a pretty massive household name. A few years
Uh-huh.
ago, they all went to Maggie Gyllenhaal, second generation famous.
Yeah.
I mean, she's not even just, her parents weren't just Hollywood, her grandparents also. She'd already been in movies that won Academy Awards. Again, not to disparage the work, but if these moments are supposed to help jumpstart careers, I'm not sure Gyllenhaal and Jesse Eisenberg are the individuals who are facing challenges of getting their work out there, so much so that we need these kind of awards to give them a chance to continue.
Yeah.
Um, but that's where we're at. That's who's going to get these awards. And so if you are an actual first time director, not making a multi-million dollar film starring Don Johnson's daughter, but you're making something that you just had to put together, who's going to say that this isn't perfect, but I see the potential and give you the chance to keep moving forward? And the answer is, unless you're already connected, no one's going to say that. So your film is going to just fade away and your career, with it. So I think that that's really the sad thing. Like, I mean, I like to think that there's a small audience out there, but an audience that really does like Quantum Cowboys and would love to see, the arc of the story. Because I'll tell you right now, the second one and the third one are wildly different from even the first one. And, they're designed, when I wrote this, I designed it as a three-part piece to look at. I would love to give that to the world as much as it was hard work and I never made any money and I worked until, I mean, the truth of being an independent filmmaker is the only reason Quantum Cowboys exists on the budget exists. And this is without exaggeration. Lauren can attest to this. For 2 straight years, I worked my day job. And when I got home from my day job at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, I worked nonstop on that film 5 days a week until 4 a.m. And then I would sleep from 4
Wow.
a.m. until like 8 a.m. and then go to my day job at 9. And then I would do it 5 days a week, every week for 2 straight years. I look 10 years older for it. I mean, it takes its toll physically on you. It's hard. It's the only way it got made. I'll never make even $1. I'm out money. I'm out a lot of money. Me personally, I'll never make anything. So you put in years worth of backbreaking work
Yeah.
to make these things happen. And the only thing I hope for at the end of that is that it could somehow go into the world and break even enough that I could make another one. And that goal, I would say, if you really make something different now, that goal's not even achievable. Like it's just gone. You're not going to be, after all that work, you can premiere at the world's arguably most important animation festival, Annecy, like we did, even win an award. And then you're going to say, hey, IndieWire, can you give us a 1 paragraph review, even a bad review? And they're going to write back and say no, if they write back at all.
Wow.
That's where you're at now, making an independent film. And that's with Anna Karina's final film. That's with Nico Case's only film. That's with
Yeah.
Patrick Page and Gary Farmer and Lily Gladstone and Kiowa Gordon and John Doe. That's where you're at. You're not even,
Yeah.
that's not even, and those resources, the reason I list those actors is I'm lucky enough to have been at this long enough. I even got the credibility of having some famous people in it. Let's say you're even a step below that. Is anyone going to review your film?
Yeah.
Probably not, you know?
Yeah.
And so now you're faced where it's not even the worry that people are going to give you these bad reviews or these lack of acceptance. It's that you're not even going to be allowed to exist in that conversation. You basically made something that doesn't, it has no footprint. And I think that's worse than the fear of not being accepted. I think the fear for people now that's going to stop them from making films is that you did it. And, I know a short filmmaker that just made a short film, filmmaker Gava, and he's older, but it's his first film. And he worked very hard. And is it perfect? No. Is it really interesting? Yeah. Who's going to play it?
Yeah.
Where is he going to get to show that film? And I think that's what people are more afraid of is
I
you,
completely understand that as a writer,
yeah.
right? Because I had this experience a couple weeks ago where I was just exhausted. Like I was sitting there just writing and writing, and you get to the point where you're just going in circles. And so I hopped offline and I saw something on social media, and somebody was reviewing a book, and it was terrible. I mean, the review was terrible. And I thought, I can never, ever leave a bad review after having gone through this process. Like, I know now what it takes. People who, and what's so stupid is I was very arrogant before. I would just tell people, oh, that book sucks, or oh, that movie sucks, or whatever. Although Drake still sucks, and always
Yeah.
will. Kidding. I like to say that to my kids because it pisses them off.
Okay,
Um,
but you're not wrong. I mean, it's a miracle any piece of art gets, I certainly say the films, it's a miracle any film gets finished.
yeah,
So before you just jump in and say, well, that's garbage, like, okay, it might actually be, but somebody cared about it and
yeah,
somebody worked hard to make it, and it probably deserves more thought than that. I would agree. If you're going to go onto an online, the Yelps of film and art, and you're going to leave a review, if you loved it, go ahead and quickly leave a flippant, this was great, give it 5 stars. That helps the world. But if you watched the first 20 minutes and walked out, you absolutely have no right to go on there and with your scathing review.
uh-huh, uh-huh,
Definitely that's it's you, not me situation, but
yeah,
people do, and
yeah.
they love to just be like, this is garbage. And it's like,
And I
well,
think a lot of it is they feel like, there's always the guy in I hate to say it, but it's usually a guy who goes
Yeah.
in there and is like, they just want to sound really, really intelligent. Like they're gonna critique this like it's, rocket science, and you're just like,
Oh yeah.
wow, buddy, this is not about me. This is about you.
And I mean, you can usually, I can guess what they look like and I can guess what their favorite films are. And you just by
Oh,
reading their review. And
yeah.
is it always right? No, but is it right 90% of the time? Yeah, it is.
Uh-huh.
It is.
All right.
Um,
Well, I want to actually talk about Quantum Cowboys as a piece of art because you did put so much energy into it. I watched it. I liked it. Everyone who's listening to this podcast, all 12 of you, should should watch it. Uh Seriously though, like this is a really cool thing. And the number one, the best compliment I can give it, which is the best compliment I can give anything I consume, is I did not expect it. Like I sat down to watch this movie and I was like, I thought it was just a cowboy movie. And I knew Nico Case was in it, and I love Nico Case.
yeah, it's
And
like I'm
so
going to
I
do
was,
that.
yeah, yeah. I was like, all right. And I love Lauren, and Lauren posted it on Facebook, and I was like, oh, click. I bought it on Amazon. I watched it, and I was like, what is happening? Right. So for the listening audience, I'm going to do my best to explain what this is.
Yeah.
This is an interdimensional cowboy adventure that that uses multiple forms of animation to tell a story, and it is just like that. I don't even like, you're exactly, how do you explain it? How do you explain it? You tell
You
me.
know, yeah. So, okay. So, I mean, it's a hard thing to cinematize. But again, why try to do something if it's already been done is a certain way.
Exactly.
What I do, even I made my film before this that helped inspire the format of this particular film, was The Phantom 52, a short, that I did take to Sundance, and I'm very happy with the reception that that animated short got. If people haven't watched it, it's free. You can go on Vimeo and watch it. But it's Phantom 52, narrated by Tom Skerritt, who, of course, is close to my heart for being Captain Dallas and Alien, but he's done a lot of other
Uh-huh.
things. But it was a story about a lonely trucker who's driving down endless highways, speaking to his CB, and no one ever responds, who might or might not actually be a ghost and might or might not be a whale that speaks in a frequency that no other whale can physically hear, which is,
Amazing.
there's a real whale that does that. So I kind of mix these ideas together. And I didn't want to anthropomorphize the whale. I wanted to whale-promorphize the trucker in what I
Uh-huh.
created. Yeah, so it's a handful and it animates strange, and some people are going to get it and some people aren't. It's a strange piece of animation. But in doing it, I cast animators for their particular styles.
Mm.
And as opposed to making everything look like I did it, and I kind of put it all together and mixed different things together, and then decided I wanted that on a greater um, platform. And it really spoke to what I did before as a filmmaker in physics. What really interested me was time theory, was quantum physics, was theoretical physics. So
Yeah.
everything from Niels Bohr and Schrodinger to Feynman to Wheeler to Everett. Um, that's what I was interested in. And the ideas that reality is to a large degree subjective, observation does actually physically affect what's happening in the universe, and the idea of multiple worlds, the many worlds theory, which was largely attributed to Everett and Wheeler, Hugh Everett and Robert Wheeler. But those they largely get credit for the many worlds theory and the popularization of it. But it's also, it's drawn from a lot of these other physicists, including stuff that Feynman, Schrodinger in particular, and the ideas of Schrodinger's cat, and that
Oh yes.
subjective, whether observation affects the outcome, and even going as far back as people like Lucretius and early swerve theories, which is where my whatever quote unquote company Swerve Pictures comes from. But and these ideas of what later got kind of looked at like atoms. So these ideas I think are really interesting, and I do have a particular bone to pick with the all the multiverse films, because multiverse is everywhere, and
Yeah.
multiverse is largely, someone watched a TED talk on the many worlds theory and realized they could just throw away all the rules of their own film universe and have anything happen and have 10 Spider-Mans in your film, which makes for good entertainment. scientifically it's not really what's going on. And if you really look at the multi-worlds, which I like to use that phrase better since that's where it started, that idea of multiple universes they are there, but think of them like potential energy. They do extinguish one another when they come into contact. And in Schrodinger's cat, don't like Schrodinger's cat as a concept because it posits that a cat has no ability to observe itself. So it is a sentient being. So saying there's a cat in either side of a box and the cyanide went in and the cat is either dead or alive, but not until you look, presupposes that the cat wouldn't know if it's dead or alive, which I think is wrong. So it doesn't, I like to think of the box having a subatomic reaction occurring that you don't notice until you look into one side of the box. And it's not saying that the subatomic reaction did in fact happen and you just don't know until you look in the box. It is that it exists both as potential energy in both sides of the box
Yep.
until you open it and the posterior and anterior time waves agree and that thing happens and it's real. I know that all gets confusing. Somebody's watching, okay, whatever I'm saying now is probably less confusing than my movie. This is me kind of trying to make it clear.
No,
But
I get it.
but the idea was that the beauty of quantum physics to me is that you can use math, that you can use numbers and systems to understand mechanically reproducible elements about the universe. I mean, in the worst case scenario, you could make a horribly deadly bomb based on math that tells you something is true that is absolutely 100% contradictory to all of your senses. Your senses have been telling you as a human being, as a
Mm.
people, we go through the world and we think we understand the universe because we see and we smell and we taste and we hear and we feel, and that tells us something. We even think because somehow we perceive time that it's this weird linear path. Math says all of that is wrong. We've used math in quantum physics to actually do things that we can then make happen. So we can say our senses are wrong. We did the math. This thing actually happens. Because that is a strange truth that we're able to see through the limitations of us as a mechanism. And that's largely the way I think we could look at time if we sort of expand our mind. I think that's cool. That's like taking a giant hallucinogenic drug. If you
Yeah.
suddenly realize truths that you can't perceive that are contrary to what you perceive, wow, like bam, you're now on psychedelics and the whole world is this crazy open thing that's really exciting. There's this new frontier. It's amazing. But it's equally terrifying because it's also like being super drunk and trying to
Yeah.
stumble and walk when you can't, because now the things you relied on to help you understand reality are yanked out of under you. I wanted to cinematize that experience. I want people to watch a film and realize there's more to the universe than we think with our senses. And it's going to be cool and psychedelic, but it's scary and it means that you don't have a base understanding going in.
Mm.
So yes, it's going to make you feel confused, not because it's random, but because I'm throwing new concepts at you on the way to think. I think that that's true in physics. And so what I wanted to do is not show you 10 Spider-Mans, or in this case, not show you 10 Lily Gladstones or Kiowa Gordons, but instead try to pick the audience up and say, you're going to watch one through line that we're going to call history of these main characters. That through line, however, is going to be perceived through the many worlds. So when you reach different observation perspectives of characters, the entire form of the film changes. So I'm trying to grab the audience and do what film can do that you can't do in theater and these other places and say, this audience is going to be pulled from one world into another world to watch it, and the whole
Mm.
format of the film will change. Yeah, that's going to take a little while to, I think, absorb as you're going
Yeah.
through it. And I think if someone really, again, it's not random. If you really watch the movie 4 or 5 times, or buy the Blu-ray and cut the scenes back together, I think that you can start to look at different stylistic sequences and cut all of one particular style together and figure out whose point of view you are seeing. Now, what I wanted to do with that too is not only say that's how the universe creates quote unquote reality, but strangely enough, the human collective consciousness does a very similar thing in what we call history and
Yeah.
knowledge. And I wanted to really decolonize the idea of knowledge. And by decolonizing, yes, I wanted to create a West where it is culturally, racially, it shows more of who actually was in the West, because the West isn't just John Wayne. The
Yep.
West is built up of people who've been here and came here from all kinds of other places. So there's a diversity to whose points of view created reality that I think is far more accurate and realistic to the world, which we tried to put into this, but also decolonizing knowledge just strictly from the standpoint that two ideas can absolutely be contradictory and true at the same time, because observation does actually affect reality. So we can't look at reality and saying there's really one reality. There is infinite number of realities from different perspectives. And I think that in its heart is the most pure form of decolonizing the concept of knowledge that you can come up with. And I wanted this to force people to kind of recognize that two contradictory ideas are true at the same time as they go through this film. And there's no better example of that than how we create history. So we have the character of memory and what we call memory. We, as a creature, can never go back in time and experience the past. So we record the past through art. And all recognition of history in the human race is through art, whether it's the art of conversation, the art of writing an article, the art of taking a picture, the art of making a song. That's how we understand history. And we do this crazy thing. We, as people, throw all our art out against each other and it competes. And we choose the most indelible piece of art and it replaces history as truth. If you
Oh,
really
wow.
say, Vietnam, if we have somebody tell us about the Vietnam War, we see that awful picture of the man being executed in the paper, or we see, Apocalypse Now, or you hear a song that takes you back, but we can't ever go back. We have pieces of art that do the best for an individual to find a way to express their own experience to other people. That's what art is. It's expressing our own personal experience to other people. And those fight and they build a patchwork of what we call history, which is what Quantum Cowboys really is designed to be, is a patchwork of different characters trying to express their individual experiences and saying that's what becomes history. Which I even if people want, if you're listening to this and you want to go watch the film, or if you buy the Blu-ray, I put some of this actually in the Blu-ray extras and in the booklet that comes with it. But what we even do when we that's how we create these ideas of history. But the further we get, this strange thing. So in the movie, history can kind of change in the Quantum Cowboys film, but the more photorealistic it is, the more likely it can change. What happened yesterday has a lot more room to change in history than what happened 1,000 years ago. So the fewer the details, the more we're married to that as an immutable truth.
Mm,
Whether it's the Bible, whether it's these old, we say that's immutable. But what happened last week, or what
yep.
happened, that 1,000 people saw, we consider more mutable. So the more we repeat an idea, the more we create an idea as art, the more we immortalize that art and stylize that art, the more we don't think it can actually be changed or thought of differently. That's the experience I wanted to put into a movie. Now, that's all ideas and concepts I wanted to say. So that's not really a movie. So the movie is the story of Bruno, Lindy, and Frank, trying to find this musician to figure out if the musician is alive or dead. That's the plot.
Uh-huh.
But the plot is supposed to put those ideas in there. And some of them are easy to see, clearly, Blackie, the musician, is, Schrodinger's cowboy, so to speak.
Mm,
Is this
mm.
cowboy alive or dead? I mean, I think the parallel to Schrodinger's cat is pretty easy to suss out. Is the cat alive or dead? And even if you watch the movie, there's never any background when Blackie does or doesn't get shot. It just goes to a black background because Blackie's the cowboy in the box. So I mean, like, it's not random. Every choice in this movie was
Yeah,
very,
yeah.
thought about. But so I think, those are easy, but I think sometimes some of the other ones get a little harder to think about. But and it's even a Western because if you go to Europe and you say Texas, they see Arizona and, Clint Eastwood or John Wayne. I think there's almost no genre where the fiction has replaced any kind of real concept of the American of the actuality more effectively. Like the concept of Western is bam, that's what we have. Maybe you could say the idea of like, Middle Ages knights in shining armor has equally done it, but I'm
Yeah.
not even sure that's been reflected in media as much as the Western. Like the idea of the Western has really replaced the reality of the Western because
Yes.
art
Dude,
history.
my friend, just to interject, my friend
Yeah, yeah,
Tom
yeah.
Meyer, who I interviewed a few episodes ago, he actually did his master's thesis on this, on horse culture, and also just about like in like medieval Europe and then here in America, and the mythologies around it and how we've adopted those mythologies as truth, even though what the average person thinks of as the Wild West and all of that time period is so completely off the mark. Like the diversity of all kinds, the all of it is completely different than how we think about it. And there's something to be said about the power of those myth making tropes, right?
Absolutely.
And
And all
yeah,
it takes
so
to break those is to think a different thought.
uh,
And you've broken them a little bit.
yes, yes. or I guess the way to start thinking those different thoughts is also to start talking to different people and reading different histories, right?
The horse is amazing because, again, I can't go back in time and say one way or the other, but there's ample fossil record that horses existed in the New World somewhere farther back. It's
Mm-hmm.
common accepted knowledge that horses got, to the native population of the Americas through being brought over by Europe and reincorporated into communities. But is there also a strong possibility that horses still existed on this continent before? Like, yeah, all that stuff is, and they're just different points of view because there are a lot of histories from the people of the Americas, look at that, even that name. The whole thing's weird, but the horses existed out west, and we will. Is there a definitive way to know? I'm not sure. Is there differing points of view that mean these possibilities exist? I think yes. So I agree. I think that you talk to people with different perspectives, and as soon as you think about different perspectives, you accept the idea of different histories, and you make that tapestry more like Quantum Cowboys, where it's this crazy ape shit changing format. Like, I think that's reality. I think reality is far closer to that than the clean one we think.
100%. 100%. And really, like, we are such fragile little beings in that we desperately want to control our environment. We want, equilibrium. We want to feel like we understand. And the greatest gift you can give yourself as an artist, in my opinion, is giving that up. To be able to say, let's just see, right? Let's just open ourselves up and see what is possible. And that's like the coolest stuff comes out of that,
I,
right?
I
When
totally
you
agree.
start trying to impose your ego and like trying to figure out how to make something that reflects you as an artist, as opposed to trying to create something that represents your perspective on reality.
Yeah.
I think that's where we go wrong as artists.
And that's what, all of my films, and I think this one is my most successful in the sense that as a maker, I try to um, express my own experience of living in the world through art. And I think that, people are often like, whoa, when did you start thinking about this? Was Quantum Cowboys is 97 minutes inside my head. That's how my head works all day long, is pretty much that movie. That's how I wrote it. That's what, it is. I have made dozens of films, but I've made, as a director, 3 features. And, I think the experience of the shorts and the features is always, especially if you're making independent films, you're making them on such a fraction of the money you need. But there are a series of compromises, and you like what you get, but you have to decide, well, I am, or, I was or was not able to bring certain things to the screen. Quantum Cowboys is the first movie I've ever made where not only is it the film that I set out to make and thought I was going to make, but it actually exceeded that. That in large part the cast, Kiowa, Lily, John, the entire cast, Gary, I would be watching and I knew I wrote this thing and I knew kind of what I wanted to have, and they brought even more. They brought these things so much. They took my idea and took it even farther. That it's the first time I've made a film where it's the opposite of a compromise. This is a film. There might have been a few technicals on animation that I'd call a compromise because I just didn't have the budget to go further. But
Yeah.
as a film, it not only lived up to what I hoped and imagined in my original, glimmer of an idea, it exceeded it. It's a better film than I set out to make, and it, to me, better subjective in the eye of this beholder. It's a
Yeah.
better film than I even hoped to
I
make,
can
and that.
only imagine how thrilling it is to watch this thing come to life, right? And I don't think in any other, maybe in dance or theater, but I don't think there's any other art form where you actually get to take something inside your head and make it visually represented in the real world, and you do it with a group of other people, right? you
Yeah,
you
they
have to
go
get the
along with you.
buy-in. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, it's amazing. It's like a miniature cult that happens for a little period of time. Like, you guys are
Yep.
all in this really cool space doing this really interesting thing, and it
And
is a
for me,
collaborative process.
I feel like it's, again, artistically, I feel like Quantum Cowboys is, for me, artistically a huge success. The experience of making it was wonderful. I mean, I just
Yeah.
got married in February, and on a make-believe day, a leap day. But uh, you know, the majority of the cast of the film, came to celebrate with me. So many collaborators, felt like they were part of that community making it. We became close and friends, and they even come to your wedding. That says a lot. Artistically, both the making of it and the end product are important to me, and I feel like those are both really beyond my best hope of what I could make. I wish that financially it was. I don't even need to get rich or famous. In fact, I'm not even sure I want to be. I mean, rich would
Yeah.
be nice because I love freedoms, but I don't think I even want to be famous. That looks a little unpleasant. But I do wish, from a practical standpoint, that making the film wasn't, basically an abject failure, in the sense that it makes it absolutely impossible to ever make another one. I don't think that I would ever. I'm looking at options now. The films I'm making, I think the only things there are to do is either make, if you're going to be an independent filmmaker, you got to make films for the kind of money people can afford to throw away. Not comfortably, but it means making films for less than $50,000. That
Yeah.
the only chance of an independent film getting a modest sale and actually being independent are numbers less than 50,000. So if you really want to say, I don't want to like lose my house making films, you got to make films under 50,000, or you've got to make them attached to studios and distribution from the get-go and pre-sales. There's no longer an in-between, unless if you're independently wealthy, that's a whole different, or if you have the connections, that's different. But if you're really coming at
Right.
this as an outsider, that's now your only two options. And it makes me sad that, as much as I'm artistically happy about Quantum Cowboys, it's a career ender for making films like that for me. I don't think there's any realistic way anyone's ever going to give me a few $100,000 to make an ambitious yet independent project, because there's no way for them to ever even possibly recoup that. So, and it's too much money for people to throw away. So
But on the
films
other
like
hand,
Cowboys
you've
existing
put
are
this,
really hard.
yeah, yeah. On the other hand, you've put this thing into the world. And look, I get I get all of what you're saying, because trust me, I hate the idea of failure. But also, like, there are I feel like art has the ability to outlive you, right?
Oh yeah.
And you have put something of value into the. I mean, honestly, Geoff, like, hearing your, and I didn't know half of the backstory about all of this, right? Like, what went into it, and the scientific kind of underpinnings of it. I just thought it was just this amazing caper, and like totally different than anything I'd ever seen, which is good enough for me, frankly. But
Yeah, yeah,
now
yeah.
I want to go back and rewatch it and kind of look for some of those cues. And the thing is, look, I have
Thank you.
nothing but respect for you and for your film and for your process, because to me that's art. And I'm sad that the world doesn't value that, but also, as a person that does value that, I'm stoked. I think it's
Yeah,
great.
I'm always glad when something like this gets to exist. And like I said, I'm very grumpy about the fact that I do think the very institutions that were left with the charge of protecting this tiny lane for stuff like this to exist have instead cannibalized it and sold out to.
Yeah.
I hate the term sold out, because I don't like to use it in the traditional sense. I'm happy when an artist makes some money, but sold out meaning um, you've abandoned the people in that lane. So
Yeah.
I think that that's largely what the avenue that existed for independent films has had. The people that were left in charge of independent film, well, they'll give you their sob stories about, well, the economy's hard and we had to do this, but the Dungeons and Dragons of the world don't need a spot at South
Uh-huh.
by Southwest and
Uh-huh.
actually need to do the A24 films. Those films are doing fine and they're going to exist. The films that really needed this, that need the press coverage, that need these festivals, that need, IndieWire doesn't have to write articles, but they do. If you go to their Instagram, they'll have 10 posts about Timothy Chalamet hosting Saturday Night Live.
Oh,
Timothy
for
Chalamet
fuck's
and
sake.
Saturday Night Live don't need that boost, and they're going to get that boost in Variety and the mainstream. So when the IndieWires, I mean, frankly, it's called IndieWire, so where's the indie coverage? And I get it. They're all like, well, we have to find a way to survive. And look, if you want to be conspiratorial, whatever the word is, you could notice the same, media corporation now owns South by Southwest and IndieWire. And then
Ah.
gives a great review to an A-list, literally there's more movies for more than $100 million played South by this year. And then they get a good review in IndieWire. Uh,
Yeah, I don't think that's conspiratorial. I think that's
yeah,
actually just the
yeah. I mean, it's
facts.
they all like follow the money. It's like, what's going on? And again, I don't want to totally hate on them. They're good people at South by. There
No,
were
I
good
know.
people making these films. Even frankly, it's a miracle that a Dungeons and Dragons, which isn't even a terrible movie, it's popcorn fun. But what is a shame is when that world paves over the tiny little alleyway that had existed for the weird films to exist and be out
Yeah,
there in their own modest way. And I think we really need to return a modest return. Again, I don't even need to make money. I can do my day job and never make any money on film and be happy. I would just like it to not be so catastrophic that I could then make another one so that every 5 years I could turn out a film that I really believe in. I feel like that's not too much for artists to ask, that you could work 24 hours a day for 5 years and somehow be allowed to at least make something because you cared about it. But we're reaching a
100%.
world that that's becoming too much to ask for. And I think that's insane, that there is money in streaming. We don't need the faux indies to make hundreds of millions of dollars while the indies don't even get to recoup $1 million so that they can
Mhm.
exist in this world. But you know,
Yeah,
me,
I
me
agree.
wanting reality are totally, totally. That's two different observations that are, reality diverged and one extinguished the other. And the version where um, you need to graduate from an elite school and then go through a lab and then make a $12 million film backed by a mini studio in order to be an indie filmmaker is the reality. And the one where you are 52 years old and you've worked in another career and you have something to say and you shift it over to this idea and try to make it, and then there becomes a spot for that to exist is the one we're not, is the reality we're not getting. And
Yeah,
I think that second reality, I mean, sure, we all have our own bias. That's the one I'm more interested in seeing. That's my bias, is that I want to see that get made.
me too. Me too. And look, I agree. Like we're not talking about either or, but what we are saying is why why push out, like there is a need, there's a desire for it, right? To have these kinds of unique independent artists who are doing things that are outside the box. That's where the cool stuff actually comes from. That's in the past, though, that's where real culture came from. It would come from the counterculture, it would come from the margins, and then it would bubble up, and then it would turn into, instead of just being manufactured the way that it is now. I mean, the zeitgeist now is manufactured. It is nothing but algorithm driven garbage designed to separate you from your money, right? And I have no problem saying that. Like you're going to
No,
find some
it's
gems here and there, but it is ugly out there for
yep,
art. So, unless you're really 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 rich, which to me is sort of a slap in the face to what art is.
yep.
Um,
I absolutely.
well, Geoff, this has been an amazing conversation. You are
Hopefully,
so
I mean, I
generous with
know
your time.
part of this is supposed to be uplifting, make people want to make art. I hope I make people want to make art in the sense that um I'm still doing it as best I can. I mean, I think my next film will probably be, a $20,000 film with friends like in Ireland because that's what can be made now. And I will love it and I'll actually potentially be happier than trying to make anything where, because you can't use a SAG actor, you can't do anything
Yeah,
doing that on a sub-$1 million budget. I mean, I think when people hear $1 million, they think that sounds like a lot of money. But if you were to actually try to use any actor, not even big actors, any actor making a living is going to be in SAG. The union is going to force you to spend 100 grand in trailers and Teamsters next to sit next to it to even allow you to use these actors. Like
yeah,
the incredible running of a small corporation that you have to do to even get a film made with the smallest of TV actors is this gigantic weight. That's when I say exit ramp, I'll still make some stuff, but my retirement exit ramp might be that I go to Ireland and make a film just with my friends and a good script, and I'd make it knowing that it will never have really a home where people will be able to see it on any wide release. But it takes me back to making something at least that I care about in a way that I feel good about. So that might be where I'm at. I hope people listening to this who want to make films don't get paralyzed and not do anything. But I do hope they go in with their eyes open so they don't
yeah,
put everything into work that just isn't allowed to exist in this world and then stop making anything because that's what I actually see happening to a lot of people, and I think that's really depressing. That I
yeah. That is depressing.
we need those ideas. I frankly don't. It's great. Some good filmmakers who come out of places like NYU, but if you look at the launch pads, the Sundances, the South by, and you look at how what percentage graduated from NYU, Yale, Columbia, USC, and you start seeing that number is like 80%. We're getting people who even are being trained by the same people to do the
Yeah.
same thing. And I'm not that excited to see the sameness occur over and over again. Again, I don't want to disparage anyone. I like that stuff, and I think all those voices deserve to be out there. And I don't want to close doors for any of them, but I would love to see the doors open back up for the outsiders. And um, opening doors is hard, and it's going to take the people in there getting the success, the people running these organizations that feel like they're doing a good job. It's going to take them looking into the mirror and really asking them, am I legitimately not closing these doors to a lot of people? And I think it's what I try to do in my own life. And I think as an artist, as anybody doing this, you've got to ask yourself, whatever position I've gotten to, I know I'm ahead of some people. Be cognizant of that and stop telling yourself that you just got there because the best work always rises to the top or because you deserved it or because you earned it. I'm not telling anyone they didn't work hard. I'm not telling myself I didn't work hard, but there's an element of external forces and luck that always gets you to where you've got. And I
Uh-huh.
think that it behooves all of us to not just rest on our hard work and say, I earned this, but to remind ourselves that you did earn it, but that's not the only reason you are where you are.
Yeah.
And we have to not build those walls behind us. And we need to start opening up
Yeah.
pathways again. So anyway,
Amazing. So
there's
true.
my hippie blah blah. So,
I like it. No, I think that's right. And from the artist point of view, I think there's a couple things. One, yes, you have to have your eyes open. If you are doing something, if you're doing your art because you want to be rich and famous, you're going to be miserable. You're going to be miserable because there's just, even if you get there, it's just such a, dogfight. I mean, it is awful, awful. The competition and the cutthroat nature of industry, and when you get to levels of money and power, it can be very hard.
yeah.
So do it because you love the art, right? And I know that that is easier said than done because, again, as artists, we want to share our stuff, we want it to be seen, we want it to be loved, but but first and foremost, it has to be something that you find value in doing just for its own sake. I think that's a really important thing, and I have to remind myself of that all the time,
So that
all
we'll
the
keep,
time.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then wait, there was one more thing I was going to say about the. This is what happens when you get old.
Oh yeah.
Um, but point being that all of our attempts to put things out in the world, they have intrinsic value, and let's oh, that's what I was going to say. As So that's from the artist point of view, but from the consumer point of view, I think we also just need to be really aware. We need to educate ourselves about how these industries work, where the money goes. If you love an artist, if you love a band, if you love a filmmaker, how do you make sure that you're supporting them and not
Yeah.
just a bunch of fucking lawyers in a big building somewhere in the middle of LA, right? Like how can you make sure that you're actually getting your money to them, to those people? And I think, we have a responsibility. If you love art, if you don't love art, what the fuck are you doing listening to my podcast? But if you love art, like, you have a responsibility
Yeah.
to
Well, from
to
film,
support
I
your
mean,
artists.
this is a really good point I think you're making. And I think from film, if you like a filmmaker, and I'd say this is probably true for musicians to a large degree at this point too, buy a piece of physical media.
Yeah.
That the universe of streaming and digital distribution, there's no accountability and money never makes it back to the makers ever. You never see a
Yep.
dime. Like no matter how many people rent your movie, somehow you just never make any money back. There's always, but it's also why again I think the 90s those avenues were more open because when there were 100,000 video stores scattered across the United States, and you could direct. Eventually, they bought your DVD or your VHS. There was a record of how many sold, and like if you premiered your film somewhere like South by, there was a world where at least a couple $100,000 could come back to you in physical sales. I still made more money on Mars physical sales than I made in streaming. Um, buy the Blu-rays, buy the DVDs, buy the records if you like the band.
Yep.
Because the counting, it's a physical item with a checkbox, so you know how many units shipped. and you usually get paid something for those. And then the second part is there's no advertising for small artists at all. So as crazy as it seems, go onto all the sites, go to Letterboxd, go to IMDb, go to Rotten Tomatoes, and leave a positive review if you like a filmmaker's work. Um, One, I promise you, in most cases, the filmmaker will read it and they'll feel better at least to know that you liked it and that they connected with
Yeah.
someone. Because part of the reason we make this is to connect. So I read every one of those reviews, and it makes me happy if someone likes it. It makes me sad if they don't. So you'll be doing a favor to the artist from a edification standpoint, but also um, even on trying to get streaming deals, trying to get things made. Frankly, those numbers, those stats make a difference in what that filmmaker is allowed to do again. So even if you reviewed it on Letterboxd, go to the other four. Go, give it 5 stars and write something. It
Yeah.
makes a huge difference. So I love your point because people have to, if we don't through some bit of direct marketing and spend of money support artists we like, those artists will um, become
Yeah.
realtors,
Yeah.
and
Oh
nurses.
God, no.
But it's what happens because then they're like, I'm just tired of not having any money, and they suddenly don't want to live in a 1 bedroom apartment, and so they just do, a job, because frankly, the garbage man makes a lot more money than I make combining my film and teaching,
Yeah.
together. So at some point, you're like, why am I working these kind of hours when I could listen to my own music and just throw garbage in the back of a truck, like or be a delivery person. It's hard to keep making a decision whenever even those jobs make better livings than you're making. And you're like,
Yeah.
why am I still doing this just to pay another $2,000 next year to mail or to email Vimeo links of my work to some gatekeepers who aren't going to watch it and then send me a form letter saying how I'm not good enough. Like that's a demoralizing road. It's
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
hard to stay on it. Sometimes going to your letterbox and reading that someone liked it, or finding out that you sold 200 DVDs makes it worth it. So yeah, support where you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah. And tell other people, just tell people, like have conversations with other people about art and talk to them about the
Make a
stuff that you like.
podcast that you talk to people. I mean, look at this. You're doing that exact work that we need. When I beg journalists of all types to cover the work they like, I mean, you're doing that, and it does honestly make a huge difference. So thank you also just personally from me and from other artists that somebody cares you're making this is a big deal.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, this has been the most delightful episode so far, I think. Really, like the time has gone really fast.
Well,
And
thank you for
you are
having me on
just
here.
brilliant. Yeah, no, I'm so impressed. Like this is our first extended conversation and you are just brilliant. I hope, I mean, I know you're probably at a little bit of a low right now because, you're coming out of this creative just sort of binge and you're kind of dealing with the aftermath and, all of that kind of stuff. But Quantum Cowboys is a great movie. And
Thank you.
it's not about it being not good. It's about, as you said, not having the right channels and or not having the audience having access, understanding what's going, what's available out there. So I hope that you keep doing your work. I'm really excited. I know you have a podcast with Lauren. I know you have a Substack that you're starting. I
Yep.
know you've made other films that we're going to link to in the show notes. And then you're also going, you said, to Ireland to make a film this year or next year. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've got a werewolf western I'm trying to get funding for through more
Oh,
traditional
fuck
industry
yeah.
standards. So we'll see that I'd be co-directing with Kiowa, who plays Frank in Quantum Cowboys, one of the leads, Kiowa Gordon. He's also was in the Twilight movies a long time ago, but also was in Dark Winds, that TV show. He's the co-lead with Zahn McLaren. And we're trying to get made. But again, it's hard. And when your previous film doesn't make a profit, it's very easy for the world for them to just you don't even get a no in this industry. You don't really get a no. You get a we want to do that, and then they never call you back. That's what you
Okay,
get.
I have a story to tell you. It's fast. I'll make it fast. So I have another friend, Zaki, who is he's a film professor and he's actually a journalist, a critic. He writes for the San Francisco Examiner.
Examiner? Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, he was on an earlier episode too. Anyway, I think it was on his, he has a podcast also, because we weren't talking about it on mine, but I listened to an episode where he does a commentary track where he watches like an old film with his buddy, and they like watch it and talk about it as it's going.
Yeah,
Uh, and so they were doing the Indiana Jones thing because he's a huge, Spielberg fan.
yeah, yeah.
And he told this story about after Star Wars, Lucas and Spielberg went to Hawaii to try to come up with a new movie idea, right? Lucas had just finished wrapping Star Wars, so he
Yeah.
flew there. Spielberg flew there, and Spielberg was like, "What is wrong with this guy?" He was like, why did I just? What is his name?
Which Lucas or
Lucas.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
God. You see what's
yeah.
happening? You see what's happening? I just turned 50 like 3 weeks ago. And this is what's
Oh yeah.
happening.
I mean, I think mine was 6 months ago, but same boat.
Okay. So Lucas was like in the dumps. He was like so bummed out and like grumpy. He couldn't get his head around any work, whatever. And what it was, he found out, is that he thought Star Wars was just going to fail. Like he was like, this movie is going to suck, people are going to hate it. Like he was just in the dumps over it. And while he was there, he gets a call from his people in LA, and they're like, dude, we've screened this, people are going fucking crazy over it, it's going to be huge. And then immediately his like mood lifted, and they came up with Indiana Jones.
Yeah, yeah.
And what that told me is, if George fucking Lucas can like get all insecure and weird and freaked out because he thinks fucking Star Wars is gonna
Yeah.
bomb. Like, that tells you what it means to be an artist, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
there's lots and lots of stories like this where you hear of like people who have done really great things in all art forms who, they aren't ever secure in it, right? Because you are so vulnerable and you put so much out there. And all of that is to say, I don't think your feelings about your art are an accurate representation most of the time about it. And so you
I
have
think
to
that's
just
probably
keep doing it
true.
and putting it out there and having faith in it.
I mean, the sad part is I think, I've managed to get 3 films out this old way, but I think they're just realistically, it took me about 10 years between each one to marshal enough resources and money to try to make one of these and then get nothing in return. And
Yeah.
it's just gotten harder. So realistically, I'll never be able to make another film like Quantum Cowboys, just practically. At best I'd be 60 by the time I could try to make one. And I don't have it left in me to keep doing the 24-hour a day and the
Yeah.
day job and the chasing this. The amount of to pat myself on the back for just a second, the amount of sheer work to make Quantum Cowboys is more than I think most people have ever had the capability of doing. And so,
Yep.
I mean, if you look at the number of sub-$1 million independent animated features, I've got like 2 of the 5 that exist in the world that I've made. It's a very impossible road to go. And I think I just, you know, uh, like an athlete trying to play the Super Bowl 50. I don't, that's that level of work is gone. So hopefully I'll find these other avenues. And that's the level. I'm actually very happy in general. I like my
Good.
life a lot. I'm really happy with the movies I've made. This that part. Strangely enough, I really enjoy walking around outside. I enjoy my wife Lauren. I enjoy a good meal. I do like the world. I just get a little sad that I think I have more films like that in me, but I don't think there's not the practical means to ever make those. But I'm looking at other ways. Can I make something within a more commercial system? Can I make something just cheaper? So those things I will make some things. But yeah, it's and I hope we open up a world to allow more people to make interesting things. So you don't have to just be like, well, I made one. That's all the world was going to let you do. But right now, that's the indie film world. And look, maybe I'll sing a different tune after trying to work in the industry. But my most successful students as of late, and my own personal success, it's easier to go into the industry than it is to go into the indie world now. The indie world is more gatekeepered than the commercial industry, and I think that's
Wow.
crazy. I think we've
That is
gone
crazy.
we've gone insane when the quote unquote the spot for these outsiders is far more curated, far more gate kept. You know,
Yeah.
you can go make something for the Sci-Fi Channel or Shudder or whatever without a lot of credentials. But if you don't personally know the right people, you're not gonna play your film at a major festival. You're not gonna. That's not.
That's wild to me. Yeah.
People are going to take a chance on you. And look, they're not even going to listen to this because they also why listen to someone as low down the chain as me? But if they did
Or
listen to
me.
it, they would say I'm wrong. But all you got to do is print out the IMDb pages for everything that's played at a major festival for the last 10 years and then circle the common people. I mean, anyone can do the research in a week. So I'm not saying something that's not very provable.
Yeah.
So it's like, whereas if you write down the directors for Law and Order, you're not going to know who any of them are. You know what I mean? There's way more chance for an outsider to get into that than there is for an outsider to get into the major festivals now. So
That's wild. That's wild. Well, thanks for the again, thanks
uplifting
for
more.
no, no, like look, I love to bitch about this stuff because there is a lot of look, I think there's like we all have this in common. We all have this desire to create, right? And some of us really are drawn to the idea of doing this as our purpose. Like this is why we're here, right? Is to do this kind of work. And it's really unfair that so many people are excluded from these processes because they just don't have the privilege, right? They
Yeah.
don't have the money, they don't have the contacts, they don't have the education or whatever. I mean, that just rubs me the wrong way, and it always has, and it always will. And so I appreciate, at the same time, the last thing I ever want to do to myself or somebody else is like try to prop them up and say, you can do anything, when we all know, I mean, at least by the time you're 50, that nobody can just do anything, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot that goes into it. But that doesn't mean that you stop creating, right? Then you pivot or you adapt or you switch it up a little bit and
You
you
find
keep
another way.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and we bitch and complain, but also if someone actually listens to this whole podcast, if you don't just listen to an excerpt, listen to the whole thing. I think it has to be clear that we're complaining because it's something we genuinely care about.
for
And I
sure.
think that when the complaints come from a place of you love this thing, I think one should hear that and not just be like, oh, that's sour grapes or that's this. I think people should listen and hear that there's people that have devoted decades to something and love it and are walking away because of the way it's treating people right now.
Mm-hmm.
You should have open ears to that and be like, oh, it doesn't mean they're hateful and dislike this. It actually might mean the opposite. It means they love it and want to see it be good and
That's
open.
right. That's
So yeah.
right.
So I'm
All right.
happy to hear you complain about some stuff. Yeah.
Yay. Misery loves company. But also
Yeah.
no, I think that there's a place for this kind of criticism, and maybe a lot of people don't want to hear it, but I want to hear it because I think it matters. It's people's lives. I know a lot of independent creators, right? People who are musicians or writers or artists or you're the first filmmaker I know. But the truth is that these are people's lives. This is the, like, to me it's tantamount to being sacred. I mean, I have enormous respect for the creative impulse. I think it deserves, I think every single person has a right to it, right? And I want to see more of it. I want more art. I want all kinds of art. I want it to be everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
And that's why I do this. That's why I'm doing this podcast. And I mean, like I am like, I don't want to see people get fucked over.
Yeah.
People with heart, people with great minds, people with great creative power. I don't want to see those people get run over.
I agree. So thank you for
All
doing
right.
this. Thank you for supporting
Yeah.
artists.
So,
I will,
all right.
and I
Well,
had a
I
great
will.
time getting to meet you and sort of meet you, virtual universe meet you. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah. Well, I'll definitely put everything in the show notes so people can find
great.
you, and we'll promote it far and wide, obviously. Um, Congratulations again on getting married.
Thank you so
Congratulations on
much.
your recent award, podcast award, writing
Yeah.
award.
We'll
Yeah.
see where podcasting goes. I mean, you're in podcasting. I'm sure it's not very lucrative, but I will say it's a little cheaper to do at home. We we do the podcast, our body
Totally.
less. So
This
maybe
is my
we'll do more.
hobby.
Yeah. So maybe I could do more, I'm gonna try lots of different things. So
Yeah.
because it's generally great. And you know what, who knows? One last shout out if it gets somehow edited in there. I have to give a huge shout out to Matt Grady and Factory 25 for putting out Quantum Cowboys on physical media because I don't
Mm,
think streaming is the way that a cult film can ever exist. And by cult film, I just mean one that takes a while to find its audience. But I do think physical media gives it a shot. So, there are people fighting the good fight, like
yeah.
Matt, that like he's putting out films on Factory 25 that are um, not necessarily going to be lucrative for him or for anything, but that puts out an extremely as good as a Criterion collection DVD. Honestly, his extras, the packaging, it's second to none. Um,
Sweet.
and it does get to exist out there. So people are fighting the good fight. They're trying to find ways, and I hope they catch on. So
Yeah. Yeah. The cool people, at least.
yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thanks again. This will be out in a couple of weeks. I'm
Great.
on a
Just
little
tell me
social
when, and
media
I'll
sabbatical.
at least send it out to, whatever couple thousand people listen to whatever I put out in the social media world, and maybe it'll
Nice. Yeah.
spread.
Hey, one more quick thing.
Yeah.
Is Lily Ledbetter really that great? Is she really that sweet? She seems
Oh,
so adorable.
Lily is an amazing human being.
Not Ledbetter. I'm sorry. That was the act.
Gladstone.
That was the Obama act.
Yeah, exactly. But no, Lily is she's really wonderful human being and a really wonderful artist. And that doesn't always come together. I'm obviously very jaded and have a lot of negative feelings, especially about the major film festivals. Cannes is not my cup of tea, really, as an
Hmm.
event. It's a lot of people in suits with clipboards shoving you out of. I mean, it's as hierarchical and as you belong or don't belong as you could ever imagine a place in the world being. And people are
Yeah.
fighting over which yacht party they're invited to or castle party. It's from a personal what I connect to. I do not connect to Cannes as an event, city, organization, whatever you want to say. But Lily was so sweet as to bring me to the Killers of the Flower Moon premiere as one of her guests. So I got to be at that and watching her get that 8 or 9 minute standing ovation and Kate
Yeah.
Blanchett standing in her face clapping. I actually teared up. So I was grumpy lamb about this, and it was to see someone who I felt like artistically deserves that recognition, but also is that genuinely good, honest, and sincere of a human get that recognition, even melted my grumpy heart. So I just have to say that I think Lily is one of the most genuine people that I just know personally, and it coincides with being something I've known for 10 years, and I think the rest of the world's finally catching on to is that also, I mean, one of the best actors I'd say of her generation, but of any generation. She's really that good, both as an
Yeah.
artist and that as a person. So yeah, I don't have enough
Aw.
good vocabulary to say nice things about Lily. Just
Oh,
agree.
that's good. That makes me happy. I hate it when I find out somebody I like is
No, and not everyone
terrible.
is, but she's, you know, a genuinely giving, honest, kind, creative, collaborative. Uh, yeah, she's great. She's really, really great.
Cool. Cool. All right,
Even
sir. Enjoy your lunch.
Fat Face didn't like
Say
everyone.
hello. Huh?
Yeah, I said even Fat Face took to her immediately. Fat Face didn't like
No
everyone.
way.
Yeah.
Oh,
She let her pet her and
well,
everything because Fat Face didn't really love. She loved Lauren and I. She didn't love Stranger. She had a lot of Stranger danger, her
yeah.
whole life. But she came up and sat right next to Lily and was like, "This one's okay." So
Oh,
that's
that's
good.
so cool.
Yeah,
Aw. You can always trust animals.
yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
well, say hi to your lovely wife.
I
Hmm?
sure will. I sure will. Well, thank you so much, and just let me know when it's out, and I'll
Yeah.
push it.
All right. You have
All
a
right,
good
enjoy.
afternoon. Thanks again.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.